Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome to my next Peter Hammill video, where today I'll be discussing Fireships, released in 1992. Oh yes, this is a big one for me. This video is just going to be talking about Fireships for a couple of reasons. I mean, for one, I think this is a pretty significant moment in his solo career. And it's also one of my personal favorites. I couldn't pin down any specific Hamill solo album and say, yes, that's the one. But as a front to back listening experience, this is very much a contender. I think it's a tremendous listen. It takes you on a journey. And it's very special. Probably controversial to say that because, of course, this is very much one of the quieter albums in his catalog. Around this time, Hamill was talking about releasing his albums in different series. So he had the Be Calm series and the A Loud series. And this is the first and only installment of the Be Calm series. The follow-up album, The Noise, is the first and only installment of the A Loud series. And then by the time we get to the album after that, Roaring Forties, it's very obvious why that idea was never going to work with Peter Hammill, because his range as an artist is way too big to, limit himself to just doing quiet albums and loud albums. But an interesting concept nonetheless. He went for it and didn't necessarily work. You could argue, by the time we get to like late '90s and beyond, the quieter style probably did overtake it. But we'll talk more about that as we go on. He got better at kind of marrying those aggressive themes with that chamber style. But like I said, we're talking about Fireships right now. So I think this it comes in a really interesting place in Hamill's catalog. Really, I think it kind of bridges the gap between two very distinct eras. Obviously at this point he's, leaving that heavy-handed 80s production era, and we're kind of working our way towards the Peter Hammill quartet era, which would characterize most of the mid-90s. And this kind of bridges the gap between those. I think it's more interesting to look at Fireships as that gap between those two, periods in his career, rather than like the first of the Be Calm and then the Noise, the first of the A Loud. If you look at the journey as a whole, this is kind of that halfway point. I should also note, some of you may be very disappointed. I am skipping The Fall of the House of Usher. That is the project that comes immediately before this one. Usher, of course, was a major project that had been in the works for years, written by Hammill and Judge Smith, of course, co-founder of Vandergraaf Generator. I must admit, I don't own Usher. I've heard bits and pieces of it, but I don't know it well enough to, make any sort of commentary on it. So I apologize, but no Usher video. We're just going to go straight from Out of Water to Fireships here. But nonetheless, I think this is... I'm sure you'll enjoy me talking about this. I hope so, anyway. So obviously already talked about how this is, very much on the calmer side of things stylistically. The albums leading up to this, the only one you might be able to compare it to would be And Close As This, which is also a very intimate style where, however, the And Close As This is very much an experiment where, he has one pass of the hands at the keyboard. Those tracks go through a MIDI processor to generate different sounds, and then he sings the vocals on top. So the end result is something very intimate, but this is very different from And Close As This because, we're not limited to just keyboard songs. And even though the material on here is on the lighter side of things and is gentler, the arrangements are very lush and rich, and, we get much greater diversity of instruments. There's guitar songs, there's some experimental songs, there's some piano songs as well, obviously, but it's still a much more diverse sound palette than And Close As This. We also get a number of guest contributors, which is very cool. It's certainly not a band album. This is still, Hammill very much in solo mode with the contributors, but the contributors are becoming more frequent, and I think that kind of, again, leads us towards the PHQ era coming up. But as far as guests, we got a couple of Vandergraaf guys. Of course, we have Nick Potter on bass for 2 or 3 songs, not all of them. David Jackson plays some fantastic sax and flute on a couple of tracks. Stuart Gordon, probably Hamill's most regular contributor through his solo career. He contributes some fantastic violin, sometimes in a solo capacity, sometimes he's layering to create like a quartet, and he does a very, very good job, of course. But I think the most notable contributor on this album would be David Lord, who is actually credited as a co-producer on this album. And I think he contributes a lot in terms of the kind of orchestral arrangements and just the arrangements as a whole. And I think his input definitely it leaves a mark on the album as well. I think David Lord's probably most well known for his collaborations with Peter Gabriel on Gabriel's fourth album, Security. But I think David Lord he did a couple of things with Hammill. I think he involved with Patient. I think he was around during the K group for. I think that's correct, but I'm sure you'll correct me. But yeah, his contributions are very significant. Even though I guess there could be an argument to be made that it's on the whole it's like a Gabriel Lord album. I take that back. I don't think that's an argument. That's Lord is an important contributor, but it's certainly not a collaborative album. This is still Hammill in solo mode, just with a little bit of extra help. As far as the songs go, I think thematically this is really strong, and I think this is what makes this album so significant. Even though he's very focused on that intimate chamber style here, it's around this point in his career Hammill gets much better at tailoring the songs to suit the style and the mood of an album. Now, I consider all of Hammill's work to be, they're all front to back listens. You listen to the, I listen to the entire thing. Every album I listen to front to back. There's no filler songs, but good songs and less good songs alike. All of Hammill's albums are front to back listens, but this one is the first one where you can really tell that he spent a lot of time and effort tailoring the songs to suit the album. Even the previous album, Out of Water, it's still very disparate in terms of style and theme. And after this album, you don't really get that so much. And I think in that sense, this kind of serves as a template for pretty much all of his solo albums afterwards. He obviously wouldn't limit himself to just doing the quiet stuff. There'd be some heavy albums, there'd be some middle of the road albums, kind of acoustic albums. But yeah, I mean, he got better at making full albums, I think, at this stage. Lyrically, I think this is a very interesting album. It tends to it seems to be kind of split down the middle. The first half of the album does seem to really focus on interpersonal relationships. It's kind of really the microscope is there, and we're really kind of zoning into whether it's romantic relationships or work related relationships, whatever it is. But it's interpersonal relationships is very much the theme at the start. But towards the end of the album, we go from the micro view and we expand outward, and it becomes more about our relationships with the world as a whole. And I think that's really, really clever, and it really adds to the total experience of the album, right? We start in one place and we end up somewhere else. But I really like how the themes broaden out slowly as the album goes on, and it just creates a fantastic journey. Talking about the album cover, I think this is probably the single best Hammill solo album cover. This is by Paul Rideout. I think it's just brilliant. It captures the mood of the album so well. I love the tone of it. I love that you can see like the tall ship in the background, the fire ship there. I love the kind of crude, harsh sketches that are superimposed on it, and I also love the fact that his face is on the cover. It took me years of owning this album to realize that. I've had this album for I want to at least 13, 14 years now. And only recently did I realize that his face is on the cover. I won't point it out in case there's, one or two other souls out there that never noticed that. Maybe I'm just not observant enough to have realized it. But when I realize his face is there, I love the cover even more. So, yeah, tremendously good cover there. But yeah, we'll dive into the tracks here. So, opens with "I Will Find You." I love the guitar arpeggios at the very beginning. It's so warm and welcoming, and it's it really starts the album off on a very positive, friendly note. It's almost kind of like opening with my favorite on PH7. It's uncharacteristically sweet and welcoming. But it's always good to have a little bit of that on a Peter Hammill album. I was quite surprised the first time I heard this to know that there was drums on it, because again I'd heard that this is the Be Calm album, this is going to be the quiet chamber music, and then right off the bat we get drums. So Just because it's a quieter album doesn't mean, he doesn't play around with kind of band styles. Um, and it creates it's a lovely little pop song, really. As far as the drums go, Hamill himself is credited to percussion, but I'm not sure if he's using like a MIDI sampled drums or if he is actually playing on an organic kit. If he is, that'd be the first time since a Black Box, I believe, that he did that. And if that is the case, I think he's become a lot looser on the kit than he was with a Black Box, if he is indeed playing the real drums. But yeah, it's a great song. A song about companionship. I always it's reading the lyrics just on their own without the music. There's almost you could almost pick out something creepy and stalkery about it. I will seek, I will search, I will find you. There's one line in there. You say if it's far away in another life. You say you're going to find your freedom. Don't run away to another life. So don't find your freedom. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but it's interesting. I think the positive atmosphere and tone of the music itself. I think that informs us that it's not a creepy song. I think it is quite genuine. I think it is about companionship and being there for your significant other and being somebody's rock, and that's good. It's good to have a song like that now and again. Track 2 is Curtains. This is a very noteworthy song. And for all intents and purposes, this is very much, your classic Peter Hammill piano ballad, lost love song. But what makes this one interesting is that it's told from the third person. So, there's an outside observer who's telling the story of Tommy and Sylvia and how their relationship kind of breaks down and falls apart. So it adds, I think that adds a really cool dimension to the, kind of prototypical Peter Hammill lost love piano ballad. I really like the storytelling aspect of it, and Stuart Gordon puts some fantastic violin to this. There's a couple of moments where it's like you almost think the song's going to end, and then that one note from Stuart comes in and kind of draws you back in, and very, very basic song in terms of arrangement, just piano, violin, and vocals there. There might be some keyboards here and there, but very powerful song, and the first 2 tracks have been regulars in the set list since this album has come out. So, very good song. I've always been fond of Curtains. I love the imagery in the lyrics too. Again, Tommy rubs the stubble and Sylvia combs her hair, and that it's that third person storytelling absolutely adds a cool dimension to that kind of song. We move on to track 3, His Best Girl. So this is another song told in the third person, but the relationship is different. I do not think this is talking about a romantic relationship. This is the relationship between a girl and her employer, who in this case seems to be something of a sleazy character. Maybe he runs a strip joint or something like that, or a brothel or something like that. I'm not really too sure. It's not exactly clear, but the male figure in this story is not portrayed in a particularly good light. He seems to be like sort of a sleazy person, and the girl is in this kind of awkward situation or whatever, and it's a good song, very haunting. I love the backing vocals; they're very significant on here. Very simple song, really. It's just this simple, descending chord sequence, very light, nicely orchestrated, but probably one of the simplest songs that he had put together in years at this point. But I think it's really good. Haunting and dark, and that little air of menace, foot down in the GTI Cabriolet. I'm not sure if that's a fancy car or if that's just a bland European car. I'm not sure, but in the context of the story, I think it's used to illustrate that this person makes his money off of exploiting women, one way or another. But good song. We move on to track 4. We get Oasis. This is one of my favorites on the album. This to me is, that experimental weird track. It's not as wild as something like, No Moon in the Water or any of the stuff on a Black Box or PH7 Future Now. But it's very percussive. It's he's using, again, I'm not sure if they're real drums or sampled drums or whatever, but it's got a very insistent, repetitive rhythmic motif, which I think is really strong. David Jackson plays some phenomenal saxophone on here. It gives the song a very exotic and kind of mysterious quality. Lyrically, I've always found this to be a bit ambiguous. He's singing about some sort of paradise oasis, but it's something that's unseen, and I think again it's very much focusing on intimacy and whatnot. So I mean that your intimacy with your significant other perhaps is it forms an oasis from the outside world, and it's something that's something secret that only you and your partner you have access to. Maybe I'm off base, but that's the vibe that I've always gotten off of the lyrics. But I think the marriage of the lyrics and the music are is absolutely fantastic. Like I said, it's very exotic, very mysterious, and yeah, absolutely an album highlight for sure. We move on to track 5, Incomplete Surrender. This is another favorite of mine on the album. This is really good stuff. So this is a great musing on the differences between men and women. And I think I mentioned before when I talked about Skin, the song Now Lover. This great song, great epic. I've always found the lyrics a little bit stiff on that song. Whenever he addresses the topic of sex, or at least in the case when he addresses it on Now Lover, it sounds almost a little bit too professory. Whereas I think in this case he absolutely nails it. And maybe the music, kind of fits the lyrics a little bit better in this case, but yeah, it's not dry, it's not professory. There's the contrast between the two main musical sections. We get the kind of string quartet, which I think is Stuart Gordon layering everything up, and then we get the I don't know if call it like a band section, but there's that bass line, that dong dong dong. There's something weirdly seductive to that bass line, and I think it really informs the lyrics quite well. But definitely, as lyrically, it's a great celebration of the two genders, and yeah, really great piece of music. One of my favorites on the album for sure. But I'm gonna say they're all one of my favorites on the album for sure. But I really like Incomplete Surrender in any case. I think it's a great piece. Moving on to track 6, this is where the album sort of broadens out and we start looking at things in the macro view. This is the title track, Fireships, and this is very much the epic of the album. It's not like a Van der Graaf epic where it's like 10 plus minutes or anything like that, but this definitely has the most elaborate arrangement. Lots of instruments on here. There's a few different sections to it, and it's a fantastic piece. I think particularly the middle section there where it kind of picks up a little bit, and there's that guitar line, and it kind of changes keys as it goes. There's lots of really great drama to it. Stuart Gordon and David Jackson both put together some. They put tremendous performances down, and it creates something real special. Lyrically, this is another ambiguous one, I find. I mean, there's a lot of metaphors to it, but I think what I get out of it is it's kind of a song about the fragility of life, really. And I mean, with the metaphors that we're given, I mean, I when I listen to the song, I picture this realm that we're all living in as a sea of fire, and we're all all of the individual souls are adrift on these fire ships. We're so close to catastrophe. If only we knew it. Which it's a classic Hammill topic, if that is what he's going on about there. But it's really good. There's so many moments to it that I'm really fond of. I particularly like the ending of it, where as the song as a whole is fading out, we get these kind of jabs of Stuart Gordon, almost making like a guitar riff, that dun 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 dun. I think there's some horns on there too. Maybe that is just a horn patch. I'll have to double check that. But I like how that riffy bit. I think it definitely is horns. What am I saying? I don't know. But I love how that riffy part raises in the mix as the song as a whole fades out. I think that's a really cool technique. Maybe that was a David Lord thing. But yeah, it's another contender for best song on the album. It's very good stuff. Moving on to the next track 7, Given Time. Fantastic, especially coming after all the drama of Fireships. I love the really long, slow burning intro. This is a case where we really get to see Hamill's developing guitar playing. He's always been one to admit, as an instrumentalist, his word is ham-fisted, both as a piano player and as a guitar player. But over the years, he's managed to refine a technique that is entirely his own. He's far from being a virtuoso guitar hero, but he's great at manipulating the instruments to get out of them what he needs. And the intro to Given Time, he's just kind of noodling around on the guitar a little bit, but the electric guitar, I should say. But it sounds really, really good. There's nothing flashy to it, but there's a couple of little, hammer-ons and pull-offs that he does, and it sounds really, really good, and we can really see him developing that unique style. And this song is a great example of that. It sounds it's certainly a lot more refined than the way that he played guitar on Mergley's 3, for example, back in world record days from Vandergraaf. Not knocking the solo in Mergley's 3. That's its own thing, but I think he certainly gets better at the guitar stuff. But yeah, nice long intro, and then this is probably the most explicitly chamber sounding song on the album, actually. Once it picks up when we get into the song proper. But it's really, really good. Again, we're in that broader lyrical space now. Of course, as the title would imply, it's another time song. Although I think this is more specifically dealing with free will and our ability to write the lives that we lead, right? With the time that we're given, that's our opportunity to do with it what we like. Which is a classic Hammill topic, and it's a very, there's some kind of haunting moments to it, but I think on the whole, it's a very optimistic song, very positive piece. Again, some great Stuart Gordon there, and yeah, just a great classic bit of Hammill solo stuff. We move on to track 8. Now this is where the totality of the listening experience really comes to the fore. We get Reprise. This one is actually co-credited to David Lord, which is quite interesting. And we basically get little elements from most of the songs all the way through. I think there's some sample, like the most obvious ones are I Will Find You. We get some of those guitar lines. We get some of the vocal trails from Fireships, which is really cool. Some vocal bits from His Best Girl. I think there is one extra lyric that's put, like a new lyric that's put on there. If you got to do it over again, would you do it over and over? Which is kind of a cool little lyrical thing there. But bringing all those elements from the previous songs and putting them in one, nicely arranged cluster at the very end is a great idea, and like I said, it really contributes to the totality of the listening experience. And in a lot of ways, the album itself seems to wrap up with Reprise, and it feels very satisfying. However, it segues into Gaia, which really it feels more like postscript. All of the stories and events of the album have already taken place, and this is just kind of like a tribute to the interconnectedness of Gaia herself, Mother Earth herself, and it's a really, really good song. And again, I think the song as a whole, I mean, it sums the album up really well, even though it does feel like a bit of postscript. How the album starts out with focusing on like the tiny details of relationships between two or more people, and then fans out to a relationship to the world as a whole. Talking about stuff like the butterfly effect is a great way to do that. One little flap of a butterfly's wings will change the course of time and history forever. And again, just celebrating the interconnectedness of everything. And I think it wraps up the album so well. Again, it's very, very slow and brooding, but again, it's a celebration. It's a happy song. It's an optimistic song, I think. And I guess, in a lot of ways, I mean, that's kind of what makes it uncharacteristically Hammill. But even though, so much of this album is very focused in one particular mood, I still consider it one of my all-time favorites because the flow of it is just it just flows so well. And again, if you're into the really heavy Hammill like riffs and the yelling and the screaming, and I love me all that stuff too. Don't get me wrong, you're not gonna find it on here. But just as a as an album that takes you on a journey, I really think it's one of his best. Um, and it should be celebrated. And if you don't have it, you should really try and find it. It's quite expensive now, from what I've seen. I think I've looked at a couple. I saw it on Amazon. It was well over $100. That's Canadian, which is crazy. I was lucky. I got this back when you could still order the albums right from Sofa Sound. I'm not sure if this is on Burning Shut or not, but it should be because maybe I'm an outlier in that. I consider this one of his great albums, and I've seen some forums where Hammill fans don't really consider that, and maybe that's because it's too focused on the light end of things. It doesn't represent the full diversity of Hammill as an artist, but and those are fair criticisms, of course. But yeah, as a front to back listening experience, it's pretty hard to beat this one, in my opinion. So there you go. So yeah, thank you so much for listening as ever. I would tell you to like, comment, and subscribe, but I'm not a conformist. If you like this video, you'll do all that stuff anyways. So I appreciate that if you do, but I'm not one to just say the same things all the other YouTubers say. It gets boring after a while, and I'm not necessarily in it for the money. I'm just happy to in it for the money. This would make maybe $10 every couple of years probably, but. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm just happy to talk about my favorite artists. So stick around. I will try and keep these fairly regular. The next video I'm going to put 3 albums in one. That'll be The Noise, Roaring Forties, and X My Heart. Or is it Cross My Heart? I'm not really sure. But at that time, I would have been 6 or 7 years old, 5 or 6 or 7. And I remember in elementary school, it was always common, cross my heart and hope to die. And I always thought, X my heart, cross my heart. But we'll talk more about that when I get there. So yeah, the next video will be on the PHQ, Peter Hammill Quartet years. And we'll see you there. Thank you so much. You'll see me in the future. Bye-bye.